My name is Carol Barkalow.
2.
My name is Carol Barkalow.
Number 3.
My name is Carol Barkalow.
Only one of these people is the real Carol Barkalow and is the only one sworn to tell the truth. Now let's meet our panel. Co-star of the new film Instant Karma, Orson Bean. Co-star of Head of the Class, Christine Hard. Film and television producer David Niven Jr. And Emmy Award-winning actress and producer Polly Bergen. Here's the host of To Tell the Truth, Lynn Swan.
Oh. They're alive and well this morning. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, panel.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
Listen, let's get right to the story presented by our first team of challengers, all three of whom claim to be Carol Barkalow. Please, read along with me.
All right.
I, Carol Barkalow, am one of the first women who ever graduated from West Point. As a 17-year-old plebe, I quickly found out that the brutal course of physical training was nothing compared to the sadistic hazing by upperclassmen. Most of the men resented women at the point and formed secret committees to drive some of us out. One girl found a saber driven through her pillow, and another woman was shut up in a metal locker. Only half the female cadets made it to graduation. The deeply entrenched sexism that permeates the Army is something that I've battled from my first month at West Point to my present position as a special assistant to the Army's Chief of Staff. My book, In the Men's House, is an inside account of my life at West Point and my military career. The Army commercials say, be all that you can be. But I say one of the toughest things to be in the Army is a woman. Signed, Carol Barkalow. We'll find out more about this story of stars, stripes, and sexism right after this. Welcome back, panel. These three people all claim to be Carol Barkalow, one of the first women to graduate from West Point Academy. So, Polly, we'll begin the questioning with you.
Number one, what made you decide to take on that kind of military career?
I decided at 16 I wanted to be an Army officer.
I see. Number three, don't you feel that the book may endanger your position?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's a good story, even though I'm critical of West Point in the Army.
Number two, when were women allowed in West Point?
The law was officially passed in 1975. The first class entered in 1976.
Number one, do they change any of the physical demands for women that the men have to go through in
No,
training?
ma'am.
They don't.
All right, David.
Number one, as a matter of interest, when you are a cadet, how long does your hair have to be as against men's hair?
Our hair has to be up when it's in uniform. We can have it as long as we like it.
Oh, okay. Number two, what was the sadistic hazing that went on? What was the most sadistic hazing that happened to you?
It was mostly, I think, low-level name-calling and other offhand remarks that bothered me the most.
So just offhand remarks. That doesn't seem so bad to me. Okay. Number three, why do you think only half of the girls going into West Point graduate?
Well, I think just the same as the guys, there's a lot of cadets who leave for reasons they don't want to be in the Army, for the tour afterwards. They fail academically, they fail physically, so pretty much the same reasons.
But wouldn't you have known you wanted to be in the...
Time is up. Christine.
Number three, what type of military career does West Point prepare you for?
Well, everybody graduates as a second lieutenant in the Army.
I see. Number two, number three, what are your duties as the assistant to the Chief of Staff?
Number three?
Three.
You're looking at number one.
I'm looking at number one. I'll go with number one.
We're involved in counter-narcotics investigations. I work at the Pentagon.
I see. Number two, who's the publisher of your book?
It's Poseidon Press.
And number one, you're talking about experiences in the first month. What were some of the things that happened to you in your first month there?
A lot of name-calling, a lot of put-downs. We had to prove ourselves.
Number three, what...
Thank you. Orson.
Well, you look very snappy, whoever you are. I love to see a woman in uniform. My first wife was a doorman, you see. It was number one, it seems to me that number 3 was saying no, that was you. I'm sorry. Number 2. Number 1 was saying that her hair could be as long as she wanted, as long as it up. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Good. Well, I'm glad to find that out. Number 3. Now, were you saying that that basically the women dropped out for the same reasons that the men dropouts dropped out?
Yes.
Well, number 1, it's very rough. Do you think the percentage of women dropouts was higher than the percentage of men dropouts?
I don't know that the percentage was higher. Half of the women that started dropped out.
And what's the percentage of men? Do you know?
I'm not.
Dropouts? Number 2. Now, was the hazing?
Sorry, that bell means time is up. And panel, it's time for you to vote for either number 1, number 2, or number 3. Our team of challengers will receive $500 for each incorrect vote with a guarantee of $1,000. And if the panel is completely fooled, the team will receive $3,000. So, Polly, do you know who it is?
Well, I absolutely know who it is. But
Then vote.
what I wanted to talk about was David's attitude. I mean, he didn't think it was so terrible, a little hazing, like a sable through a pillow, being locked in a metal locker, give you an indication of what a male chauvinist pig he is. There isn't any doubt in my mind it's number 1, because she never once went out of military position on that chair.
Okay, number 1. David, rebuttal.
Well, although number 2 described her hazing as a lot of name-calling, I'm voting for number 2 because number 2 referred to Orson Bean as Sir, and I think that's very polite.
It's also ridiculous.
Christine.
Well, I was very confused. I'm not quite sure who it is, but I'm going to go with number 1.
Orson?
Well, they all look fine, but I can picture all of our good, strong, brave women in the Gulf saying, you know, after the hazing I put up with at the point, I can take anything Saddam Hussein can dish out. So I think that that doesn't lead me to a vote for number 2, but I did anyway. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with the ballots all in, our panel has placed their confidence in number 1 and 2. You both have a pair of votes. Number 3, you don't have any votes. Now it's time to find out who the real military muckraker is. Will the real Carol Barkalow please stand up? And it is number 3. Number 3. Carol, let me ask you, what was it about you that you think got you through that 4 years with all the hazing going on?
Well, I think having 3 older brothers, getting used to that. I grew up very athletic, and it was almost survival of the fittest. So with 4,000 guys and 100 women who entered, a little over 100, that was difficult.
So when you became an upperclassman, did you dish it out as well as you took it?
Well, I tried not to do that destructive hazing, just constructive hazing, and there is that.
Okay, let's find out about your imposters, who they are and what they do. Number 1.
My name is Carolyn Moe, and I work as a substitute teacher.
Terrific. And number 2?
My name is Colleen Fitzpatrick. I have a doctorate in nuclear physics, and I designed the first laser to go on board the space shuttle.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Absolutely terrific. You stumped our panel, which means your team will receive $3,000. Congratulations. And thank you for playing on To Tell the Truth. We'll be back with a 5th grader who just finished her first book. She didn't read it, she wrote it. We are back on To Tell the Truth. Let's meet our next team of challengers.
Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is Tara Jean Cusack.
Number 2.
My name is Tara Jean Cusack.
Number 3.
My name is Tara Jean Cusack.
And panel, it is up to you to find the real Tara Jean Cusack, and here is her story. Please read along with me. I, Tara Jean Cusack, am an author. My first book is called School Biz Is. It's a collection of cartoons about life in school. The characters are based on my real-life friends. Susie is the prettiest, most popular girl in school. I kind of think of myself as her. Some of the jokes in the book really happened to me. Here's one about Susie and her friend Nicholas, who really enjoy music. Susie asks, Nicholas, what is your science project about? He answers, ancient rock. Susie says, fossils and old rocks? He says, No, the beginning of rock music. Now, I'm working on my second book entitled Boy Girl Days Craze. It's a book about why girls don't like boys and sometimes why they do like boys. Personally, I like older, more mature boys. Signed, Tara Jean Cusack. Orson, you'll have the privilege of going first to find our literary genius here.
Well, there are certainly three beautiful young women up there. Number 2, how does it feel to be a published author? How did you feel when you first held that book in your hand and said, I did that?
It felt like that I finally did something that I truly wanted to believe in myself.
I think that's wonderful. Number 3, how many copies of the book have been printed out?
300.
How many?
300.
Isn't that great? Number 1, have you been selling them?
Yes.
Do you sell them in school, or where do you sell them?
In bookstores. One store I sell them in is Greenmore.
Oh, I think it must be you. You're giving a plug to the bookstore already.
Christine.
Number 3, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, I just wanted to.
Number 2, who helped you get it published?
Stewart Printing and printing work.
Okay. Number 1, how well is it doing? Is it selling great?
Yes, very good.
Terrific. And number 1, did you illustrate it yourself?
Yes. I drew the pictures. They had to do with my school, and I just picked some kids from my school, and I illustrated them the best I could.
Number 3, how did you decide what friends to put in your book?
Well, just around school and stuff, I just picked them.
Okay. Oh,
David.
Number 2, can I have your bow? Hi, turning more.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, who buys these books?
Kids and adults.
I see. And number 2, do you go out and promote the sale of this book?
No, I just give them to the bookstores, and then they just like put them on the racks, and then just say like they're best sellers or something.
Okay, number 1, in your next book, it says you personally like older, more mature boys.
Yeah.
Like what sort of age would that be?
Well, around 12 and...
Yeah, that's pretty old. Yeah.
Good shot, Orson.
Good shot.
That rules you out, David.
Yeah, I'm just a little old.
Just a little over that 12 mark. Polly.
Number 3, do you also do all the drawings and the writing?
Yes.
You do. Number 2, do you do the drawings and the writing?
Yes.
I see. Number 1, what first gave you the idea of doing this?
Well, I decided that since school is like, I think it's kind of hard in some points, and I just got the idea of doing something that had to do with school instead of just regular comic books, something more interesting.
I see. Number 2, why did you decide to, why do you like more mature boys?
I think more mature boys is for, like, if you get those little ones that are wild, then it's like you have to boss them around. They're like babies. If you get more mature men or kids, they're like, how do I put it this way? They're nicer and sweeter.
In my own personal life's experience, I have found exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same thing.
I really
Well,
have.
The school bell has rung.
I did not hear a bell
That
ring.
means your time is up, and your time has come to vote, Polly.
What?
Once again, we must vote for either number 1, number 2, or number 3. And all the men here are much too old for them. So, Orson, who did you vote for?
I couldn't resist. I had to vote for number 2. She's the most extraordinary. She should have her own show.
Christine.
I was torn very much between number 1 and number 2, but I went with number 1.
David.
Number 2, don't like it.
Well, I just thought number 1's description of older men and the sort of more mature people that she was going to like at the age of 12 was just splendid, so she got my vote.
All right. And Polly.
Well, I was aggravated because when they showed the picture on the little screen with the cartoon girl, it was too far away, so I couldn't tell whether it was a brunette or a blonde, which I think probably would have been very helpful because then I would have known whether it was 1 or 2. So I just guessed. And you really want to know what okay,
Yes.
1.
Number 1. And it could have been number 3, too.
Well, it could have been number 3, but I
Absolutely
think
correct.
it's number 1.
Well, with the votes all in, number 1, you have 3 votes. This panel has a lot of confidence in you. Number 2, you have a single vote. Number 3, you don't have a vote. Well, let's find out who the real young writer is. Will the real Tara Jean Cusack please stand up? Tara, you were wiped out again. Wait, how long did it take you to write the book?
3 months.
3 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you have help from your parents or the kids? Did you work on the computer? Did you just freehand it, or how did you write it?
Well, mostly like free-handed.
Yeah, and it's great. Yeah, I hope I get a chance to see the book. It's absolutely terrific. Let's find out who your imposters are and where they go to school at, okay? Number 1, what's your name and where do you go to school?
My name is Adrienne Grady, and I go to school at Vintage Man.
Okay. Number 2?
My name is Wendy Baranek, and I'm a 5th grader, and I like to read and play with my cat, Spookers.
Okay. Well, you're all so cute and you're all very talented. Since the panel didn't make one correct selection in terms of their vote, your team wins $3,000. Yes. So, thank you very much for being here and playing on To Tell the Truth. And we'll be back to play one-on-one with someone from our studio audience after this. Maybe they'll give me a loan. What do you think? Now it's time to play one-on-one with someone from our studio audience. So, Burton, who do you have for us today?
Today, Lynn, we have Chuck Slater from Thousand Oaks, California.
Chuck,
Hello.
welcome. Here's your chance to play one-on-one. I want you to meet a lady who has 2 stories. Please welcome Marge Carlson. Marge, welcome. Chuck, Marge is going to tell you 2 stories, only one of which is the truth. If you spot that true story, you'll win $500. So, Marge, what's your first story?
I am a whistler. I make a living as a whistler, and I run the only whistling school in the United States.
Now, Chuck, that may or may not be the truth. Listen to Marge's second story.
I'm a dentist. I'm the dentist for the animals at the San Diego Zoo.
All right, panel, here's your chance to help Chuck win $500. One question about each story. Polly, we'll begin with you and the story, The Whistler.
I have never been able to whistle. Could your school teach me, and if so, how?
If you can whistle, you can whistle. If you can't whistle, I can't help you.
David.
Okay.
Well, then what good are you?
What is the most difficult? I think I'm using up my time here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is the most difficult song to whistle? Or tune, or whatever it is?
There's no difficulty. It's just the way you do it artistically.
Okay.
Christine?
What kind of living could you make from whistling?
Doing concerts.
I see.
Orson?
Calling dogs.
There you go.
A whistling school. Have you ever thought of branching out into Coleman paper or anything more exotic?
No.
Thank you. A succinct answer.
Chuck, you heard the first story. Now story number 2, The Dentist. Polly.
How often should I take my cat to see you?
Once a year.
Once a year.
David?
Well, other than very, very carefully, how do you give a crocodile a filling?
You dart them.
You what them?
You dart them.
Oh, okay.
Tranquilize it.
Right.
Or
Christine?
dart them. What's one of the worst things for an animal's tooth?
To have an abscess and not be able to eat.
Okay.
Orson?
How can you tell if a tiger has a toothache, for instance?
They don't eat, they don't feel well, and they don't eat properly.
Oh, the poor babies.
All right,
They do
Chuck.
a lot of attacking, too, Orson, I bet.
Chuck, you've heard the cross-examination. Is Marge the whistler or is she the dentist at the zoo?
I think a whistler would remember the difficulty of the flight of the bumblebee. I'm going to choose the dentist. I think she's a dentist.
Marge, what is your true story?
To tell the truth, I'm the whistler.
I'm sorry, Chuck. You don't win the money, but we do have a lovely gift. And Marge, for you, we have $1,000 because you stumped Chuck. Now, I tell you what, let's listen to you. Can you whistle us a tune?
Sure, I'd be like to. Love
Okay. Sarge, thank you very, very much. That's absolutely terrific. Thank you for being here and playing one-on-one. And we'll be right back after this. Thank you for all being here. We'll see you next time on To Tell the Truth. So long, everyone.
This is Burton Richardson speaking for To Tell the Truth, a Mark Goodson television production.